That must have been very hard losing someone you love like that. I've been very lucky. I lost my parents. That's the way of the world. But to lose someone that young, that's like being cheated. That's very hard.
I'm beginning to be very fond of you, Lieutenant. I think you're a very kind man.
Don't count on that, Miss Mitchell. Don't count on it.
Happy New Year, Sean. It's end of year. It's going to be 2018.
Yes, it will. It'll be in about 4
hours.
hours. Of course, most of the people listening to this are listening in February or March, so... But just to let you know, this is how we roll, folks. We record this stuff way ahead of time in batches, and then we let it out. But the reason that you probably haven't heard from us for a while is because of the holidays. Because both of us are very busy, and
right.
So the gap between the seasons, so to speak, was longer. And to fill you in a little bit of inside baseball, we did our Columbo Goes to College episode in early December, and then we weren't able to record because I kind of...
Nice.
Steve used to have a seasonal job. Now I have a seasonal job, and we just... so now we're recording on New Year's Eve.
Well, in 2017, I don't know if there was much news in Columbo, but I like to think that there was a new podcast that was launched this year. That was pretty much it, yeah.
There will be more.
In
fact,
more.
Just today, I found out on the Twitterverse. I'm not a Twitterer, but somebody was following me, and I had to check this out. There will be a Columbo cookbook coming out in 2018.
What? Okay, besides chili and the occasional hard-boiled egg, what could you...
Well, my understanding is
have
that the lady who put this out, or who will be publishing this coming February, her name is Jenny Hammerton, and the book will be called Cooking with Columbo, Suppers with the Shambling Sleuth. And I don't see a chili recipe on the list of selections, but they're all named
What?
after
No,
various actors who have been in Columbo, like Vera Miles's Mexican Casserole, Donald Pleasance's No Name Curry, Oscar Werner's Wiener Schnitzer.
Is there a Robert Culp?
Oh gosh,
meal
there's got to
in there
be.
somewhere?
There's got to be.
There's got to be.
I don't see one. Oh, this is my favorite though. This is my favorite. Where'd it go? Here we go. George Hamilton's Ginger Snap Dandy. What is that?
What is that? Is there an 8-minute hard-boiled egg over a trash can?
Oh, here we go.
No, okay. Because, he just knocks those things on any bacteria-laden, bumper of a car.
This sounds
trash
disgusting.
can lid.
Billy Connolly's stuffed trout. Oh, there is a chili recipe, and oddly enough, it is not a Peter Falk recipe. It's Trish Van Devere's all-day chili in the pot. Trish Van Devere, of course, is the murderer from Make Me a Perfect Murder, which we did a few episodes ago. But
Well, is there a recipe
let's see.
for Ruth
Yes,
Gordon?
there is. Ruth Gordon's zucchini omelet. They have one for almost every... Yeah, zucchini...
A zucchini omelet?
I don't know.
Why would you
I
get
have
a
no
zucchini
idea.
omelet?
I mean, it should be like Ruth Gordon's, toad in a lead hole. I don't know. But, yeah. Anyway.
Speaking of Ruth Gordon...
Yes? Oh, yes.
We're reviewing a murder mystery of her.
Yes, I forgot what we're really here to talk about. That would be the next in our series of podcasts. We're going to talk about Try and Catch Me from season 7, I believe, of the classic Columbo series starring Ruth Gordon.
Well, that's the weird thing. Okay, so on Google it says it's season 7, episode 1. On the DVD, it says it's season 6
DVD
or the final
is wrong.
episode of season 6.
I have the perfect source for this. It was released on November 21st of 1977. Okay, and the episode before it, which was the Bye Bye Sky High IQ murder case, was released on May 22nd of 1977. Yeah, that was before this one. There were only a small handful of episodes in this final one. I think there were maybe 4 or 5, maybe more. But this was the first episode of the last season of Columbo, Classic Columbo, which of course ended with The Conspirators, which we've done. This would be our 3rd episode from that season, by the way. And I just want to say right off the bat, watching this, the very first minute of this, with the music and the way it looks so polished and so cool. It looks, it doesn't look anything like the Greenhouse Jungle, which of course is that one that you really liked and I didn't like. It even has music that's not recycled. I mean, it's not been used in any other Columbo since, nor in any other episode before that. Yeah,
I did notice when watching it for reviewing. The music really does stand out. I thought, really, really good stuff.
They do.
I didn't know they recycled it that often.
This is a time though they actually reused something else though. I noted this. They rarely do this, but this is the second mystery author to feature in a Columbo story. The first, of course, being Ken Franklin, all the way back in the first season.
Where he has a writing partner, right?
It would have been so cool if they had a reference to that, to Mrs. Melville or something like that. But, and this is the This is the second episode that we know of. In fact, I think it is. But this is the second episode that we've done now where the murderer takes off to New York City from L.A. while they allow their victim to suffocate back in L.A. Yes.
Yes, the wine one.
Any Old Port in a Storm.
The name. Yes.
Yeah.
Any Old Port. Yeah. Interesting, because that I was thinking of that episode while watching this one, and I'll explain that at the end. But anyways, Ruth Gordon. So she plays mystery author.
Correct.
Abigail Mitchell. And she seems like such a spunky old fun lady that.
Oh.
I mean, you dislike her. I mean, she's you enjoy her.
Oh God! I mean, have you ever seen Ruth Gordon? Yeah,
except if your name was Eddie.
Have you seen Ruth Gordon in something else, like any other movies?
I remember seeing her years and years ago, probably like when I was in high school, where she was with a young man.
Harold and Maude.
It was like in the 60s.
Yeah. That is a great movie.
Do
yourself a favor. Watch that again now. It's a much better movie when you're older, and man, it will make you cry. She, of course, was in Rosemary's Baby, where she won an Oscar, and she was also in a movie called Where's Papa, which I've never seen, but I hear is hilarious, and tons of other stuff that we've never seen. But yeah. Oh, yeah.
No, she seems like she'd be that fun aunt to have. And speaking of being an aunt, that's the premise. She had a niece. What was her name? Phyllis. And Phyllis died mysteriously on a yachting accident. Sounds very similar to Natalie Wood murder, but or accident. But anyways, so Abigail has blamed the husband Edmund for Phyllis's death, and she always believed that. So that was her motive, and why we find out why she wants to kill the poor guy. And of course, he seems pretty innocent. I'm going to ask you later what you think of him, if he was responsible, if he was a murderer or not. But so that's the setup. She wants to kill him, and so she's plotting, and when she's going to use her home safe that she has. It's this big walk-in safe, kind of like what Tom has in your house.
No, it's not. No, our safe is not that big. We have a safe that's from the movie Saw 2, that's big enough to put a teenage child in.
Uh-huh.
Not this big.
A little creepy.
I know that sounded... Okay, guys, go see Saw 2. You'll understand what I'm talking about.
So, okay, I don't know where to go with this. Yeah, so at the very beginning we see Abigail, she's testing the soundproofness of her safe. You really don't know what really she's doing at that point, but she does set up an appointment to see Edmund at 2:30 the next day to walk along the beach. And what's really neat about this scene is there's also a kind of a weird transition. Maybe you can explain to me, but the neat part is she's talking to Edmund saying, "Hey, I want to redo my will. I'm going to write you in as the sole heir, and I need you to come in and sign some paperwork." And she's talking to him, and she wants to go over the boating accident with Edmund. She goes like, "There's nothing you could have done, but I know what you did. I know everything you did." Almost like she's calling him out.
Yeah, it's a really, really well-made scene because they're on the beach facing each other, and it's shot in a way that she says, "I know what you did, Edmund. Everything you did." And then we cut to a shot of them, and there's a couple on horses.
Yeah, so explain that to me.
Between
why do we see horses, out of nowhere, and then split between them? Like, there's two bareback horse riders on the beach, and you see them galloping towards
I don't know if they were bareback.
The couple, and they split, across either side of the camera. But what's the point of that?
I think it was it looked cool, and I think also that it was to sort of put a little exclamation point on the gravity of that moment, because what they do so well in this, the guy who directed this is a guy named James Frawley, and this is also the scriptwriter as well, is that there could have been some exposition where we find out that she thinks that he killed his wife, but instead of, we get that one line, and the exact line that she says is, "I know what you did." Everything.
Right. She's not saying,
and then it's punctuated by those horses.
She's implying, he thinks she's talking about, or we assume he thinks she's implying, "I know what you did, tried to save her," but what she's really saying is, "I know that you killed her."
Yeah.
Okay, so we set the scene.
She's she's playing a game with him the same way that she later plays a game with Columbo. But she turns on the cuteness with Columbo. All murderers play a game with Columbo, but she's much better at it than most murderers. that's why it's called Try and Catch Me, But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, so what she's trying to do is try to get Edward, the victim, into the house to sign the paperwork with the lawyer, the family lawyer or her lawyer, whatever. And she tells him, I want you to come back later after everybody leaves. I'm going to give you the code to this big walk-in safe." And so she's kind of setting it up, right? So she's getting ready to leave. There's more to this.
And luckily, her lawyer is also an electrician, apparently.
I'm going to bring up this part, actually. So anybody who's done any kind of home improvement, I've done some... I'm fiddled with electronics. Sean, I collect pinball machines, so I fiddle with those. I fool with electronics that are from the 60s and 70s, and I've electrocuted myself enough times to know what that feels like. But what she's doing is really bad, really hazardous. You can easily kill yourself, and not knowing what you're doing, she could have electrocuted herself very easily. And so I found that funny that they kind of just... She kind of shortened out the switch real easy, and I don't know. I found that odd.
If
I didn't know what I was doing, I was putting in a metal rod into those wires. That's not a good idea. And ladies and gentlemen,
she asks her lawyer to do it.
Electrocuted himself enough times to know what that feels like.
Yeah, it's really unpleasant, but she's got it timed apparently. In such a way that, while the lawyer fixes that, which is so risky, because what if he was better at fixing it than she thought he was? He's going to be down there sooner and catch her with Edmund.
Well, all lawyers have a skill in electronics, I'm sure.
Yeah.
and electricians.
Yeah, it's kind of like a video game. If you're walking around and you see a book and it says electrician's handbook, your electrician skills go up.
And so, speaking of electricians, so the light in the safe is out, by the way, too.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's her tampering or if it's always been that way, like she says. But, anyways, so...
Ooh, that's a good point. Well, if it was her tampering, could you imagine how evil that would be?
Oh, no, she's quite evil. I think we've discussed this. I don't know if it's been on this podcast. We've discussed this before, how Edmund dies is probably the most horrific way for a guy to die.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we should just approach that now. So
I would rather be shot in the head by George Wendt in my car any day than die like this.
So he had enough to think about it. He had enough to leave hints, in the dark with air running out. I mean, the guy died a horrible death, slow, painful, horrible. I mean, this woman, she's so sweet, but when you know what she did, it's just he suffered. He must have.
And to think that he was probably pounding on that door and screaming and yelling right after she closed it on him while she's talking to her lawyer, and she knows that, but of course they can't hear him. It's just really. And
all the while she's on a flight to New York and drinking scotch.
Yeah, but what's really also really sad is that his character, his not so innocent but sweet. He's really nice to her. I don't know what his motives are for real. Obviously, he stands to maybe inherit her wealth, but he's really nice to her. There's even a line that he says when he's signing the will. He says to the lawyer, the lawyer says, well, don't you want to read it first? And he says, why? Don't you think I trust her? And, of course, the last thing that he
There's another thing he says where she says, in case of my going, if I pass. And he said... paraphrasing, but he says something along the lines like, well, I hope that never happens. I hope you live a nice, long life.
These are things that you say to your grandma,
yeah.
And she kills him. And the look on his face right before she slams
I know what you did!
I know what you did. You murdered me. She tells him.
Now, let's take the thought that maybe he didn't kill Phyllis, and maybe he's thinking...
Okay,
maybe he's thinking, when she said that, maybe what flashed in his head was like, oh my gosh, you saw the time I had my dick in my hand when I was in the bathroom upstairs.
What?
Sorry.
What? Okay. So
well, I mean, she's got electronic doors and crap. Maybe she's got cameras in the bathroom. Who knows?
No, you may be thinking, she does have the electronic door. That's right. That goes over the safe. But the look on his face. But yeah, you know what? That's
what I would be thinking. Like, she saw me in her bathroom. Oh no. Sorry.
Whether or not he really did kill her niece is a question that's been posed in other podcasts. And I think that he did kill her.
You want to visit
that
now?
Not because it would make.
I don't think he did. And why? Okay, why do you think he did kill her? Like, what are the clues to you that he did the deed?
There is only one clue,
Uh-huh.
Okay, and that's the part where they go to his apartment, which is the swankiest bachelor pad ever for 19. If I was a dude in the 1970s, I'd want that bachelor pad. He's got a full rack of wine. He had half a glass of wine and half a bottle. He didn't make his bed.
Saw some Jim Beam in there.
Anyway. Yep. Yeah, he had. I've never noticed this before, but there was on the dining room table was a unfinished game of solitaire. So apparently he'd like to play a little bit of solitaire. But the clue in the apartment is that he didn't have any photos of his dead wife.
You know what? Maybe he suffers, and every time he sees a picture of her, it just makes him depressed, and he had to remove all images.
No,
I think he was innocent. He did not want Abigail to die. He thought of her as a sweet old lady that he needed to, be nice to. And if he really wanted her wealth, I don't know. I don't think there was a reason for him to kill Phyllis. I think he was innocent. I think Abigail was evil, Go on.
Maybe the reason that he killed Phyllis wasn't for her wealth.
She was dagging him?
But because maybe they got into a drunken argument and he hit her and she fell over the side and drowned. Or maybe he found out that she was cheating on him. Or maybe she found out he was cheating on her. And he, I really think
maybe
that
he had a gay love affair with Christopher Walken and they got to an argument and fell overboard.
I'm sure that wasn't what happened.
What are we talking about? I'm sorry. Are we talking about the show?
You're talking about what's his name?
Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood.
And Christopher Walken.
That's the prevailing theory in that, is that Walker and Robert Wagner were lovers, and Natalie Wood caught them, and an argument ensued, and she fell overboard from that.
Well, you've been watching too much. I don't know what the hot gossip show. But anyway, I want to go back a little bit. One of my favorite things. One of my favorite things in watching some of these is going back and looking to see what the actors in the other things that they've been in. We talked about Ruth Gordon, and another one was G.D. Spradlin, who plays the lawyer Martin, who I think may be Texan. I'd have to look it up, but he's got a slight Texas accent, and you don't get named G.D. when you're from Massachusetts.
GD, what that stands for. Go on.
He was. We talked about this off air, and I didn't realize it until I watched it for this, and I looked it up, and I had just seen The Godfather Part 2 the other day, because there was a marathon around Christmas time. He played the senator in The Godfather Part 2, the one that they set up with the dead hooker.
That happens.
And also, for those of you who are fans of the Ed Wood movie, he was in Ed Wood. He played the guy who told Ed that he would finance his movie if there was a big explosion in the end. And, of course, Charles Frank, who played Edmund, was in a movie called The Right Stuff, where he played astronaut Scott Carpenter. Do you like movies about astronauts, Steve?
That's cool. I didn't know that.
You do? Well, there are very few movies about astronauts, and The Right Stuff is probably one of the best ones.
Yes.
As long as you take off the beginning with Sam Shepard. Don't like that part. But, and there were other people. Valerie, the secretary, I didn't recognize her from anything. And the maid, Annie, who I just wrote down. At least I think that Abigail Mitchell is the only Columbo murderer in L.A. that doesn't have an Asian maid. I wrote that down.
Doesn't have an Asian maid.
Just
nice. Okay.
Because they always have Asian housekeepers. Just saying. I don't know. Hashtag just saying.
Okay.
So Steve. So the murder is committed, and one of the first things that Columbo says to her when they're meeting in her office there in front of the safe, he points out to her that the burglar alarm, which, by the way, Abigail, aren't you putting on a bit thick? You've got this huge safe, and on top of it, you're going to put a burglar alarm on the safe. I mean, what the hell you got in there, Abigail? But he mentions that the burglar alarm was on, and I always thought this was a mistake because we clearly see her not turn it on right after she quote-unquote kills Edmund. And she says something to him to the effect of, "Oh, yeah, I'm so confused." And they talk a little bit more. They go down and they have tea in the other room where he almost breaks a 400-year-old chair, which was really funny, and which I think was referenced in another episode. But she says to him, "Oh, I remember now why the burglar alarm was on. I called my maid, Annie, and had her turn it on while I was at the airport because I forgot." Why, if he thinks it's murder because the burglar alarm is on, why did she not tell him right then and there in the study while they were in front of the safe that, "Oh, that's because my maid Annie turned it on this morning or last night"? I can't remember which it was.
Because Annie then would have said otherwise. Because remember when she got back from New York, the cops are already there. I don't know.
Yeah. Because she doesn't turn it on after she kills Edmund. I think
that was a film mistake.
But she does explain
an editing mistake.
No, it wasn't, because 5 minutes later she explains to him that she had her maid turn it on when she called from the airport. But he mentions this, and this is like, this is why he thinks it's murder, and she doesn't explain it away right away with what is actually the truth. That kind of bothered me a little bit. I didn't understand why she would do that.
I did like the quote, though. She said on the flight, she said, what, daytime is for work, but night is for play, or something like that. She has, and another scotch.
Yep. Yeah. Stewardess, can I have another scotch? That's pretty much me on every single
So one of the things that's a big clue is that Edward leaves his keys on the desk. Did I said
Edmund?
Oh, yeah, Edmund. And so she buries it in like an ashtray. Like that was a thing in the 70s where you had plates of sand for cigarettes. Oh, so she buries it, and she's like, I guess she's thinking she'll retrieve it when she comes back, because she has to leave for the airport to catch a flight to whatever convention or whatever she's doing.
Why she didn't bring the keys with her and then toss them in New York, I don't know, but that would have been wiser.
But anyway, so when she comes back to L.A., as she walks into the house, you see the ashtray. Now it's got like 3 cigars in it. I thought that was funny. Like, I guess Columbo's there because...
and she makes kind of a face at that point.
And I love how the maids or the help of all these like mansions always have a problem with Columbo and his smoking. And I can't think of exact examples, but I know every time Columbo comes in, the maids or the butlers always complain about his cigars.
Yeah. Oh, the double shock one with Martin Landau, where he plays the twins.
And there's another one as well. Like I said, I can't think of it. But so I just find it funny that the maid's getting pissed off with Columbo of all his cigar ash.
I want to talk about a really great scene where that really does not move the plot along. This is a shorter episode, so the running time is about an hour and 10 minutes or so, and it has a lot of what I would call puff in it that doesn't move the story along, doesn't move the mystery, but again, it doesn't seem like it's puffing. And that's the scene at the ladies' club, which is probably, I think, hands down, one of the best moments for Columbo ever. Yeah. The fact that, she... First of all, he goes in there, and she says, well, I've got somebody here that's very experienced in...
Yeah, I know, yeah. No, she said, I wrote it down. She said, someone whose murder is a part of his everyday life. And you see Columbo, like, stand up, looking around. Who is this guy? I'm trying to figure out who is she talking about.
It's magnificent. And that's not him putting on an act. That's him actually thinking, wow, is Sherlock Holmes here? But his speech that he gives a minute later is fantastic about, I just think that was wonderful, and it's kind of a prelude to something else that he tells her later on that I'm going to talk about.
So yeah, he basically says during his speech, his impromptu speech, that he not everybody's a murderer, and the world's not as dangerous as you think. But when he does run across these murderers, sometimes he respects them, and sometimes he sympathizes with them. But no matter what, he does not approve of what they do. But he does, like, again, respects them. And back to what you were saying about the episode where I can't remember the brothers, the one with the wine factory. Any old port. It made me think of that episode because at the end when he arrests the brother, the older brother, he respects him, and it made me think of that scene because he offered him a glass of wine. It may not have been the finest bottle of wine, but he respected him enough to offer him probably his last glass of wine that wasn't made from a toilet. So. So he does respect, and he does. He's very. Columbo's very generous, I think, as an investigator. He some of the people he does get put against, he does do them justice, I think, in a way. You know, there's many a times where he will confront a murderer. He has it's the last few minutes of the episode, and he says, you know, once you collect your things, and the person says, I just want to walk around, and he says to them, take your time. You know, he doesn't like drag them off to jail. He lets them have the last few minutes of their freedom. It's really quite nice.
And there are episodes where the murderer is a complete asshole. And you've seen this episode. We haven't done it for the podcast yet, but Fade into Murder, the one with William Shatner.
Oh,
He plays the detective on the mystery show. He's a complete fucking asshole. But him and Columbo get along like a house on fire. Seeing the two of them on screen in that episode, it's like such great chemistry. And then, of course, that's not the case for him in Butterfly and Shades of Grey. But yeah. And then, of course, there are those that don't get along with Columbo. And this is part of the reason that I love the show, is that Columbo gets along with William Shatner, but Dick Van Dyke is a total fucking prick to him. Like, we're going to cast Dick Van Dyke in Columbo. What are we going to cast him as? Let's just make him an asshole. Let's make him a complete fucking asshole.
So, what, you know? the scene where at the women's book reading club, and Abigail's kind of introducing Columbo, she says something like, his specialities are in hyper-modern chemical techniques and their application to advanced criminology. I'm like, what the... I had to listen to that 3 times so I could write it down, because...
What's so awesome about the two of them is that they both know that they're smarter than the way that they're putting out. Like, she probably knows that he doesn't know what the hell she's talking about, but she knows that he's going to play it off. And he knows that she's the murderer, but she's charming, and he's going to go along with everything that she does and says and be really sweet to her, the same way her poor nephew-in-law was, which is really cool dynamic, really cool chemistry between the two actors. And I love, there's a great line when she lets him drive her, was it a Rolls Royce?
Rolls Royce, yeah.
And she says, he's talking about when he was young, and she talks about when she was young, and, you know, they had to, you know, she says, well, shall we exchange poverty stories, Lieutenant? And he says, not in a Rolls Royce, ma'am. So I have to, for every episode that we record, when I edit, I take out a little clip of some dialogue between the Columbo and the murderer. And I'm at a loss for what I'm going to do for this episode, because there's so much great, funny, dynamic dialogue between the two of them. Everything, and not just the dialogue, but also I think the actors' choices. And by the way, I could just go on about this one forever. Even the little things like when he's looking at the nephew's apartment and he walks into the bedroom from the living room, and she's walking behind him, and she's doing this sort of skipping thing where she's...
Yeah, and she's mimicking him too. Like, because Columbo does this thing with his hands, like he puts it to his head, he points... He does, like, I don't know, the Holy Cross in the air. I don't know what he's doing.
He's
like going through the motion. Yeah, she's doing it. She's mimicking him.
She's mocking him, mimicking him, and yet not disrespecting him at the same time. Not because he can't see her, but because she thinks if I do this, probably he just thinks I'm going along with his game. Unlike the last pair of murderers we met in Columbo Goes to College, that loved making fun of him and loved pulling him.
Yeah, that was a different kind of mimic. Or mocking.
So,
well, we're kind of skipping ahead. There's one scene, and maybe you could use this for your clip. It's a scene where they're trying to match Edmund's shoe print in the garden. And and Columbo's always looking for new shoes, apparently, because I didn't realize that was a thing until this episode. So he starts talking about Edmund's nice shoes, how he would like to have shoes like that because they're round-toed and that's the French style, and you know. And I'm thinking those are the ugliest damn they're looking shit shoes I've ever seen.
They're really ugly. They look like dancing shoes almost. They look like something Austin Powers would wear. And then he goes, yeah, this is French style. And then he turns the shoe over.
Yeah,
oh,
French.
Oh, made in Italy. Oh, well, they're still nice. And I love how he doesn't say Italy. He doesn't say Italy. He says Italy, just like my grandma. Italy. Made in Italy.
Well, it's like when he offers to drive after the the conference or whatever the speech, and he offers to drive Abigail. He says, "Oh, we can take my car. It's French. It's what he
it's unique. It's one of a kind." And she takes one.
It's one of a kind. She goes, "I can tell.
I can see why."
Let's talk about the car for just a moment.
Okay.
So that car is in varying degrees of condition every time I see it. It might have a dent in the door. It might not. It could be a different color. I mean, I'm starting to think that Columbo may have 10 of these cars. He's collecting them, and the reason it's a rare car is because he owns them, all of them.
Yeah, this one, the license plate was barely hanging on. I noticed. Yeah, and I don't know how he could see through that windshield, but he could. So. Yeah,
but I'm pretty sure there's multiple Peugeots out there.
There's another thing. Oh, go ahead.
Uh-huh. Oh no, please.
No.
Okay, no, wait, no. I'm sorry. In my notes, I highlighted this part, and I definitely want to bring it up because it does come into play. So there's a part early on where Columbo is always excited to see this person, like, oh, I'm a big fan, or oh, Mrs. Columbo, or my brother-in-law is a big fan of yours. Can I have your autograph? There's always that scene where he's a big fan.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, Mrs. Columbo is a big fan of her books, of Abigail's books. And
I know what you're going to say.
So, in the past, Columbo has said he doesn't really have time for books. He doesn't get to read them. And that Mrs. Columbo, when she finds out a new book is coming out from Abigail Mitchell, she'll reserve it at the local library. Okay, that's nice. But to further my theory that there is no Mrs. Columbo, he seems to know a lot about Abigail Mitchell, that I think he is actually reading those books.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
And as a matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, over the holidays, I sent my co-host Sean a video, YouTube video, about a guy. I thought did a kind of nice construction of Columbo, the entire series. What was his name? Norman?
I have no idea. I don't remember at all.
But and even he thinks Columbo's wife is fictional.
He didn't say that in that video. You're just making that is not true.
You were drunk when you watched it.
I was drunk when I watched it, but maybe you're right.
But no, he brought up the point that Mrs. Columbo is not. So I'm not the only one out there, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, just wait.
Wait for what?
Just wait. That video was a real, and I wish we could put links in the show notes. That's what real podcasters do. But he talked about how in these stories that Columbo, although he's the good guy, he's trying to solve a murder, he's technically the antagonist. He's introduced about 10 minutes, 20 minutes into the story, and the murderer is the protagonist, and the murderer spends the rest of the story trying to get away from Columbo, and it doesn't work. But there's a couple other things, recurring things in Columbo that come up here. Yeah. Okay, you talked about the car. You talked about the wife. This is probably my second favorite dog episode, because
it's hardly in it. Okay, go on.
Well, he brings his dog to the pier, and he tells her, "Oh, I bring her here because does he say this? Does he say the boats make him frisky?"
Yeah, he goes. No, he says that he likes to bring dog walking, I guess, to the pier, which is the same pier where he gets his chili in another episode.
Yeah,
but he says, that dog enjoys the walks out here, and Abigail says, "How do you know he enjoys seeing the boats or whatever in the walk?" And he goes, "Because it makes him frisky." Is what he said. and of course, you look at dog, and he's just kind of like, He
actually picks him up and holds him over the rail, And then he says, she says, he seems to, I like this description, he seems to be dragging bottom. But what a cute dog, I think. I think if I want a dog, I want that kind of dog, but Basset Hound.
You want a dog like that?
Yeah, maybe I'm just a little bit drunk or something. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a scene there, while we're there. So, Columbo's talking about he just needs proof. If he can just find the car keys, those car keys that Edmund had left, out, and the ones that Abigail had buried in the ashtray. He says, if I could just find those keys, I find the murderer. And of course, Abigail's out there initially so she can throw the keys into the ocean. And then she presents them to him like, oh, well, here are the keys. I've got them. You think you found the killer? No, you didn't, because I found them by a water sprinkler. Now, what we kind of missed in this podcast is that who found them. Was her secretary?
Yeah, it was Veronica, the secretary. She found him in the sand.
Right, so Veronica kind of blackmails her in this because I think Veronica figures out what's going on pretty early on. Like, why are these keys here, and why is Abigail looking for them? Mm-hmm. She even says, "I need more money. I want to travel. I want to go on the cruise with you." She doesn't want to leave the country without her because she's afraid that she'll set her up and frame her,
Mm-hmm. Would Abigail really be able to frame Veronica, though? What would Veronica's motive for killing...
Oh, she would. No, she tried to. She tried to towards the end.
Well, later at the end, but...
Yeah.
What's interesting is that I think that everyone around Abigail thinks that she maybe had something to do with Edmund's death, because later on, when she's about to leave on the cruise, her lawyer is there. By the way, whose lawyer comes to meet them off? Anyway... He says to her,
You're a lawyer. You don't do that for your clients?
I wish. He says to her, I get the idea that maybe he was a Tom Hagen, like maybe she was his only client. But he said to her, call me anytime you find a body in your safe. And,
he knows. I think everybody knows that she did it.
Yeah.
Don't you?
And they're all defending her because she's just so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
But
so Veronica confronts Abigail in the rose garden, and here's another odd choice of edits or direction. Maybe you can help me understand. Kind of reminds me of the horse thing, beginning of the episode. So Veronica is telling Abigail that I found the keys. I want more money and I want the travel, so forth. Blackmailing her. She's giving her the terms. And during the whole time, you hear a bee buzzing. It's overly annoying. It's not in the background. It's almost like it's above a normal level to annoy the listener or the viewer.
I don't think that was on purpose. I think
you don't think that was on purpose?
I did not hear that myself. So but I know that you have a really good sound system. So it's possible that the sound editors maybe did a job. I don't know. I'm sorry to burst your bubble on that one. I don't know.
I was wondering if there was some kind of natural bug horse thing going on, but whatever.
So you thought there was a connection with horses and bugs?
And bees, yeah. Whatever. Okay, but there is a connection, Sean. I do have a very unique connection between this episode and previous Columbo episodes.
Okay, what is it? Tell me, please.
Belly dancers.
Yes! I wrote that down, too! I wrote down Columbo's belly dancer fetish.
So what were we... Yes! So what were we watching? It was one with Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah.
They were spies.
It was 2 episodes ago, Identity Crisis. Yeah, where they're in the bar with the belly dancer. Yeah.
He cannot take his eyes off the belly dance.
Oh, God. It's like he's a 13-year-old boy.
Oh, he's got a fetish for those things. I don't know what's going on.
This, I must say, I believe those are the only 2 episodes where there's belly dancing that's ever in... And by the way, that belly dancing scene did nothing to further the plot whatsoever, because he asks Veronica, did Abigail have you type up the manuscript and then put it... Did she tell you to do that or something like that? It doesn't really help. It seems to help establish that Abigail wanted Veronica to find the body. Find the body, but beyond that, it's also a reason for him to ogle belly dancers and then be
and that whole scene where he gets encircled by a bunch of belly dancers and
I don't think belly dancers ever come up again in Columbo, even in the 90s.
No?
No, I don't think so.
Well, there wasn't a thing in the 90s. I think it was a 70s thing.
Well, I was in a restaurant in the 2000s, and there was a belly dancer there, and she came up and danced by me. Of course, that was when I was young and thin in my early 30s.
Did it turn you on?
Didn't turn me on. Although I find ladies' bellies very attractive. They are extremely skinny ladies. I'm sorry, but.
Nice. All right, so let's move along. Nothing to watch here.
That came out really wrong. I got to ask you a question here, Steve. I got to ask. This bothered me. When did he know? First of all, he thinks it's murder right away because of the car. Number one, the burglar alarm was on, but that's explained away quickly. The car keys are missing. That means there had to be somebody else there. When is the point when he thinks that it's Abigail Mitchell?
I think he knows really early because I think he's playing a game with her. He just doesn't have the facts. He even says that, like, I don't have the facts to prove my case, and I need to do that, and I'll be back. Mm-hmm. I think he knows she did it. I think obviously Veronica knows he did it or she did it. I think the lawyer, BJ, knows
Martin.
She did it.
The character is Martin, but the actor is GD. GD Spread.
GD. I think he knows. I think everybody knows it, including Columbo, that she's done it. And so But the problem is, and that's why I think he's playing with her. Is like, there are some people that are nice and I respect that are the murderers. I think he's talking to her.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
I think definitely from that point when he's delivering that speech to that book club, I think he knows.
Yeah.
And he's just saying, I like you. You're a sweet person, And
it's extremely discomforting if you think of it in her shoes. And also, she says later on what they're at the pier. Oh, it was really kind of creepy. It actually made my spine tingle. When she says, well, I think you're a very kind man, like she's being all sweet. And he turns to her and he says, don't count on it.
Yeah.
Damn, that's
he doesn't say that once, he says it twice.
Don't count on it, Miss Mitchell. That's something that like a hard-boiled private eye would say. Don't count on it, lady. Don't count on it. Like it's almost like, you know what, I like you, but fuck you, you killed somebody type of thing.
Well, yeah, he both says we're both professionals.
Yeah.
So there's a scene that kind of made me chuckle. This was after they were she gives him the keys at the dock, and they go back to her house, and she's showing him, like, this is where I found the keys, by this water sprinkler. Mm-hmm. And so Columbo goes, okay, I've got everything I need, and he starts to walk away, and so she stops and she goes, Columbo, I have one more question. Mm-hmm. And he does a little chuckle. That cracked me up.
I think because he never says that in this episode, and there's somebody else who says that it's the maid. When Abigail's asking the maid Annie about the car keys and the sand, about the sand, and she's like, "Okay, well, thank you, Annie." And she goes up, and the maid turns around and says, "Oh, there's one more thing, ma'am." It's I think that's totally on purpose that they had to put at least two that I know of, one more things in there. And neither of them were spoken by Peter Falk. I thought that was brilliant.
That was great.
And I guess we're winding down to the final scene. We really need to talk about the final scene and the gotcha.
Yeah, we'll get there. Well, let's go to the cruise scene.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, you're very excited about this, I can tell.
I love the cruise scene, and I think it's funny because when I was looking up the actress Ruth Gordon, whatever her name is,
Ruth Gordon. That's it. Yeah.
On IMDb, she was on the Love Boat before this, which I thought was kind of
everybody on Columbo was on the Love Boat at one time, probably.
Yeah. So she's having her little bon voyage party or whatever. I don't. Do they do that? I didn't know you could have people that weren't on the boat or ticketed on the boat would have to leave. Like she had some kind of weird party. You could be on the boat and then you had to leave after the.
I've been on the first time I was on a cruise back in 1987. I was like in 7th grade. We did have that where we had some friends come on the boat with us and have some cocktails, and we threw the streamers over the. I don't think they do the throwing the streamers over the rails anymore because that's like bad for the environment and the water. But we were allowed to have people on the boat with us during that time. I would bet you anything though that they don't do that anymore because of security. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
And she had a really nice room for a cruise ship, by the way.
That was really nice. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, Columbo confronts her and says, you can't go on this cruise. You've got to come with me. See, this whole time he's been fighting that she cannot leave the country. I'm assuming that wherever the cruise is going, he
won't
allow her to do that.
He brings it up when they're in Edmund's apartment. He says, "Well, we may need you here instead of on the cruise," and that's the only time that she gets pissy at him, and because she's like, "Well, plans were made weeks in advance. You're going to have to speak to my attorney." And at the end of the conversation, he says, "By the way, I will speak to your attorney." So
yeah, and that's definitely. I think he knows something's up.
Yeah.
So yeah, he basically takes her off the cruise, brings her back to her home, and yeah, this is a great scene. So they're starting to piece together the last moments of poor Edmund's life. Oh my God, what a horrible way to go! I cannot imagine. I would not want. Oh gee, so he's they're going over. He pulls out these safety deposit boxes that she has. He's got black paint under his nails, and she's like, "Oh, did he scratch his way?" She's very, very graphic, I guess, as an author, a murder mystery author. She's very graphic about how his death. She's just relishing that he suffered.
Yeah,
Not
to mention she might actually the way she plays along with Columbo in this. She says like, "Well, an arrow pointing down. Maybe he was pointing down to his new shoes." Or an arrow pointing up. Maybe heaven is my destination. Or is that a V? Do you think it's Veronica?
Is it a V for Veronica? Yeah. Or A for Annie? not her name, but Annie, the maid. So yeah, it was so funny.
And this is the scene where he says, "Ma'am, you haven't been truthful. I think that you were here with Edmund before you went to the airport." And what the director did, it was a very slight thing. It just sort of zooms in on her very closely, and she goes, "That's very bold of you to say, Lieutenant. Can you prove that?" And he can't. But, yeah, it's really cool. And the reveal of what the actual gotcha clue is done so well.
I would have never have guessed.
Yeah.
I would never have guessed. So, yeah, what he does, poor Edmund, he rips the front page off her last book, which was, what was it titled? The Night I Was Murdered. And he scratched out, so the front page, whenever you get a book, ladies and gentlemen, I know not many of you get paperbacks or books anymore, it's probably all digital, but on the first page you usually have the title and then who it's by. And so the last book she wrote was The Night I Was Murdered by Abigail Mitchell. And so apparently Edmund had scratched out the night part. So I was murdered by Abigail Mitchell. Mm-hmm. And boom. Yeah.
And he hid it in the light bulb socket and used his belt to point an arrow on the safety deposit boxes pointing up at the light. And it took me years to realize why the hell would he do all that? And it's because he was afraid that... And Columbo explains this. And I obviously never listened, but in case Abigail was the one that opened it and would have destroyed the clue. But,
right. He didn't know who was going to open the safe.
But the reveal where... And you know what? I do think that he knew all this before he even brought her in there. Like, he found it beforehand and he was just playing with her the whole time. Like,
yeah. Oh, he had to be. He seemed to... Yeah, I agree.
And but when he brings it out, the actual sheet And when he goes up and gets it out, I mean, she's making all kinds of stupid things. Like, maybe he was writing that the light bulb didn't work. He was always a bit of a complainer. She's losing it a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Because she has no idea. She's completely out of control. And he unfolds the paper, and he says, and this is so good, the music cues, everything. He says, could you read it out loud? And she reads, I was murdered by Abigail Mitchell. And they both sit down. He sits at her desk. She sits across from him. And she tries to talk him out of arresting her. An old woman, harmless nonetheless, because she'll spend the rest of her life in prison. In fact, I think she may...
Oh, yeah. She's probably got 10 years left.
Yeah, I think she didn't even, in real life, have 10 years left. She may have died like a year or two after this. I didn't look that up, but... It's done superbly. It's very well acted, very well directed, very well written. Everything is there. And the last thing she says to him, and it's a compliment, she says, if you had investigated my niece's death, maybe none of this had ever happened. And
yes. That was very, very dark. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, she even said that, the earlier in the episode, about the death of her niece, how the cops kind of just, filed it away.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think if Columbo had been assigned the case and if Edmund had been the killer, I think Columbo would have found that out. So. And so it is kind of sad. And the way the music pulls out of the scene, it's very sad.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So, you ready to review it?
Yeah, let's review this fucker.
Okay. Well, for
I went first last time. You went, so you go first this time. By the way.
Okay, so let's rate this out of 2000. Oh, okay, I don't know. 2018 is the number because that's the new year. Out of 2018, I would rate this one a nice solid 2000. I really like this one. I'm going to leave room for a little error. But honestly, really a good episode. Mm-hmm. I mean, you really felt for the murderer. You felt sorry for them. I mean, even Columbo, with his speech at the book club. The actress, Ruth Gordon, she was perfect. I've seen this episode twice now. Once a couple of months back, and then for tonight. And I loved it. I thought it was a great episode. I honestly don't think Edmund was purposely killed Phyllis. So that's just my personal opinion. A little dark. We did get to see Dog. I like seeing Dog every so often.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think 2000 is a nice solid number for this one.
Yeah.
Belly dancers.
I agree with you 100%. I think this ticked off all the boxes. I'm going to give it, just because you've done this in the past and I'm going to be a dick, I'm going to give it a 2005. This is actually, before we started this podcast, I knew ahead of time that this was my favorite episode. This is the one.
Oh, is this the favorite episode of Sean Hummery?
Yes, this is why I showed it to you when you were visiting a few months ago.
Oh, did I watch it with you?
Yes! We were sitting here in this very room that I am in now.
Okay.
I thought you would forget most of it. Did you forget most of it?
I forgot that I watched it with you first.
Okay, but it really takes off all the boxes. We have a really unique relationship between the murderer and Columbo. We have all the Columbo stuff. He mentions the wife repeatedly. We have the car briefly. We've got the dog. We've got belly dancers and his belly dancer fetish. It really is. It's a perfect Columbo episode, I think. Maybe I should give it a 2018. I can't...
Full score, huh?
I can only think of one other episode that I may like more than this. There's one other one, but this is up there for me. I mean, this was like, if this was a movie, I think that this would be like a classic. Maybe not. I don't know, but I was so impressed by this, even after watching it umpteen times, that I'll watch it again. I will show it to people that are initiates, Columbo initiates, to get them hooked on this. It was not the first one that I showed you, by the way. The first one I showed you was Playback, and then I showed you the Dick Van Dyke one, and then I showed you this one, and then I showed you the George Hamilton one, not the 90s one.
Okay, that doesn't help. But no, this is definitely I could watch this probably again tonight and still enjoy it.
And the part of it is also that we've got this really sweet person that committed an unbelievably heinous murder. I mean, just that's like I would have nightmares about that. That is like a Game of Thrones murder, which actually happened on Game of Thrones. Like, the only way it could be worse is if she buried him alive in a coffin. Okay, because then you have confined spaces.
Well, Britt, that's what she did. That's what she basically did.
Almost. Well, it wasn't
in the dark.
Small.
I mean, he had no lights. He had 6 matches, and he burned every 6. And like she said, he was burning the oxygen he needed with those 6 matches.
It was like really gruesome mafia revenge crime in a way, but obviously she was not.
Oh yeah, she was the heart of the devil. I mean, she's this little old lady, the sweet little old lady that you would like, that you would want to spend time with.
Yeah.
But anyways, so I wanted to go over because obviously it's the holidays. So for Christmas, I got to play a video game that I really enjoyed, that I received, was L.A. Noire. Are you familiar with this game?
I have heard advertisements of it on other podcasts.
Interesting. So it's a video game where you're in homicide. It takes place during the 40s, maybe 50s. I think it's late 40s, and you've got to solve murder. So you ask questions of people to try to figure out if they're the murderer or they're suspects, whatever. Try to get more clues.
Is it an open universe game?
Yes, so it's you can go anywhere, do anything, and it's a really fun game. And I was thinking, if they do a reboot of Columbo, which we've talked about, I would think instead of doing a complete reboot, maybe doing a prequel kind of thing, where we see Frank Columbo, as a street cop, working his way up to homicide. Like in this game, L.A. Noire. I think that would be a really cool idea. Make it a time period piece that takes place in the 50s.
I like this idea. But it's the same format, right?
It'd be the same. Yeah, you would know who the murderer is, but you just see police officer Columbo. Maybe he does a street beat.
But then he wouldn't have as much access to the suspect as if he was a lieutenant. But it would be a period piece.
Yeah.
So that would make it kind of cool.
I think that would be awesome. It takes place in L.A. But if you haven't played the game, and I know you've got a Xbox 360, right, Sean?
Yeah, I've got a little dinosaur that runs around in it every time I turn it on.
Well, this game came out on that, so I recommend you need to find this game. It's
Wait
really
a minute.
fun.
It is on the Xbox 360?
Yeah.
Really? Oh,
yes,
yeah.
Please find it. You'll love it. It's like a murder mystery book, but in video game form.
Oh, yeah. I'll buy that shit. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
So you got to travel to locations. You've got to interview witnesses, interview suspects, and the way you react to them, like do you ask them like a good cop question or a bad cop question, or do you accuse them? And the way when you're doing an interview, they might their eyes might be looking left and right because they're lying, or you've got to pick up on their physical cues if they're lying to you or not. And you can be mean to them if you want to try to get the truth out of them. And if you respond to them the way you need to, sometimes that opens up more clues that proves your point. And so when it's time to accuse the suspect, you have all your clues and you can then put them in jail.
Interesting.
And then you go on to the next mystery. So it's like multiple mysteries. Each one takes about 5 to 10 minutes to solve, and it's great. It's awesome.
Now, let me ask you this, Steve. Would you like a movie like that?
What do you mean?
Well, okay. Well, because the way that you're describing it, it actually sounds like this movie from the late 90s called L.A. Confidential, starring...
I've heard of that movie. Yeah, I would like to see that, but I've heard a lot of people compare this game to Chinatown.
Okay, all right,
Which I have not seen. I have not seen that. Jack Nicholson, I've not seen that, so I kind of want to see that now.
Okay, and Faye Dunaway, who is a Columbo murderer from the 90s, by the way. You should see that movie. You should not watch it with kids.
Okay.
There's nothing graphic about it. Just, you know what? Kids wouldn't like it anyway. It's a little slow, but it's
Chinatown?
It's kind of adult. It has nothing to do with Chinese people or Chinese food, unfortunately. But let's just say that, yeah.
Oh, darn. Well, then never mind. I'm not going to watch it now.
Well, we have feedback. Hello.
Oh, so feedback.
Yeah, feedback. We've got a couple of really fun emails. The first one is from a gentleman named Victor. He says, Dear Sean and Steve, I listened to the last 2 episodes of the Columbo Confab Series 3 this week and enjoyed them even more than the first 2 series. Well, that's good. You know what? I can tell that Victor is not from the U.S. because he calls them series instead of seasons.
Oh.
He said, first of all, thank you for mentioning the lack of black characters on the original Columbo and the total lack of black killers on Murder, She Wrote. The show, at least the original series, is still one of my all-time favorites, but at one point it had occurred to me that if part of the appeal of Columbo is seeing a working-class schlub take down the rich and powerful, the fact that no black person was ever the killer might be sending the message that blacks would never be a position of power where they could kill with impunity. That's true, yeah. Now he goes in a slightly different tangent. I saw Blade Runner 2049 in a theater Thanksgiving weekend. Wait a minute, maybe he's not from the UK because he says Thanksgiving weekend. I'm not going to read into this. So maybe the studio only pulled the 3D version, and I enjoyed it. It kept my interest the whole time, and I found it an immersive experience. I especially appreciated that, in contrast with, for example, Star Trek Beyond or Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. The climax wasn't an interminable battle sequence.
I like this guy. I wholeheartedly agree. I wonder what his thoughts are on the latest Star Wars movie, though.
I have not seen the latest Star Wars movie because I am bad and un-American.
Well, I think, in my mind, Blade Runner, what was it, 2040, what?
2049. 2049.
Was my favorite movie of this year. Oh. Awesome.
Then he says, obviously, and I think he wrote in again, or I'm sorry, he wrote in earlier, and then he said that Identity Crisis, which is the one with Patrick McGowan and Leslie Nielsen, he said that was one of his favorites. He said, obviously, I disagree with your dislike of Identity Crisis. It's probably my favorite of the Columbo episodes where Bill Driscoll was the head writer without Peter S. Fisher. I kind of like being Columbo being brusque and businesslike on occasion. Besides the ending with the clock, one of the things that made the football episode with Robert Culp stand out for me is the lieutenant's interactions with the private eye who planted the bugs. That was one of which the scenes was on the pier that you talked about in Try and Catch Me. What I like about scenes like that and the scene in the hospital in Exercise and Fatality where Columbo displays anger toward Milo Janis is that they demonstrate that Columbo's cuddly goofball image is mostly a facade as opposed to his actually being a cuddly goofball. Another example,
it's kind of like a thin veneer that could be, that if you don't tread lightly, it'll show.
Yeah. Another example of this would be the look on Columbo's face when Nelson Brenner tells him that he had his house bugged. Okay. I don't remember. He said, I think be seeing you was also a greeting McGowan used on the Secret Agent / Danger Man series. And he says, was there really a Lou, Ted, and Murray in Butterflies and Shades of Grey? I know there was a Ted and a Murray, but I don't remember a Lou. I may be wrong. He says, those were the names of the 3 main male characters in the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I'm looking forward to Series 4. Be seeing you, Victor. Well, thank you, Victor.
I didn't really think of that. Oh my gosh, that's really funny. Yeah, because in Mary Tyler Moore, you had Murray. That was the boss. Ted was the bumbly news anchor.
I've never watched that show. I feel really bad. I'm so sorry. I know that Ted was like a womanizer kind of. And Betty White was on that as well, right?
I don't know. Was he a womanizer? He was more kind of a goofy, dumb.
He was was he the weatherman?
No, he was the news anchor, played by Ted Knight.
Okay. Okay, our next email, and second of last emails, and after this we will be revealing what we're going to talk about next time, is Ed Doug. He says, greetings from Maine. That would be Maine the state, not Main Street. He says, hi, Sean and Steven. And then he says in parentheses, just going alphabetically. He says, I just found you recently. I like all 3 Columbo podcasts. Well, thank God for that. I hate when people say, oh, they're assholes or whatever.
You're like the third, maybe my 4th favorite.
Yeah. You all bring something. A female Columbo would be cool as well, but I still have plenty of your podcasts to look forward to. Okay, so this is I don't know if Ed is really, and if you want to see a female Columbo, watch the remake of Dawidziak, which is a French thriller from the 50s, I think, which is where the idea of the Columbo persona was developed. It was from that French movie, and then they remade it. And Kathy Bates played that character in the remake. That's the closest I can. Now, what he does is he lists some of the episodes that we covered with some links, and I did not hit some of the links because it's on my phone, and my phone is slow. But the conspirators, talking about Carol Hemingway, he says she doesn't appear to be too Fox News friendly. I'm assuming that means she's liberal. I don't know. Strange Bedfellows. He says Steiger wanted to play Michael in The Godfather. Rod Steiger wanted to play Michael in The Godfather. Remember, Rod Steiger played the punk-ass gangster in Strange Bedfellows. That eventually was the reason that, he told George Wendt he was going to kill him. So George Wendt, confessed to Columbo so he could go to prison. Instead of being... Do you remember this? You don't remember this, do you? Yeah, it was back in season 1. We're in season 4. Okay. Any old port in a storm. He says, Columbo guessed that the AC was off in the room containing the wine on the day of the record heat. He could have easily found out if the winery lost power on that day. Knowing Carsini didn't really trust anybody, nobody else had access to his valuable wine. He must have turned off the AC before he left. Why would he do that? Or maybe just turned off the power completely. Any sort of supermarket automatic doors, you need power to open them. No one else had a key, so no one could get in. But with no power, no one could get out. Just my theory anyway. And Robert Walden, mustache guy, going after his dead friend's girlfriend, fiance, is still with us. I'm sure that I asked that question if he's still alive, because I know that his fiancée wasn't alive. Because I'm obsessed with deciding whether or not people, or knowing whether or not people are alive or dead. Okay, then he says, now file this away, Steve. He says, just a random thought, but would it kill Mrs. Columbo to get involved with one of his cases? And another subject, if you would like new Columbo adventures, try, and then he sends a link to a handful of books, which I have tried. I've read only one Columbo novel. It wasn't even a novel. It was a collection of short stories by William Link. There are a number of old Columbo novels out there, I think from the 80s. But what turns me off about the novels, and I haven't read them, but they're like Columbo and the Helter Skelter murders, Columbo on the Grassy Knolls, and the Grassy Knoll. They're like centered around like actual murders that, like the Manson murders or the assassination of President Kennedy. And I have no interest in learning, but I don't think they're actually like that. But I maybe we'll do a Columbo book club someday. But he said, I look forward to your next podcast. Well, here it is. It's one of my favorite Columbo episodes. Oh, I think he's talking about Columbo Goes to College. The murderers are spoiled jerks, but do know how to throw a party and have great fashion sense as well.
Well, tuxedos are like Bermuda shorts, absolutely.
Sorry about the length. That's what she said. Oh, that's what he said.
Oh, boo.
But I had a bunch to say. Hopefully, I'll add more after re-listening and newer casts. You've been warned. And then he inserts, choose what emoji you feel fits. Thanks, Ed. Thank you, Ed and Victor. That was very good. We enjoy getting emails from folks. We will always read them, assuming, it's something positive. No, fuck it. We'll read emails if they're negative. Because I think that there's people out there that probably are like Columbo diehard fans and think we're a couple of fucking idiots. So
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Well, at least I am.
We are. We're man-childs. We're man-childs. We're men-children.
Yeah. Men, children. Yes.
So this is the part... Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, can I say one thing? I know earlier I said
just
like
one more
2017. Thing. Yeah, just one more thing, ma'am. Just one more thing. I said earlier 2017 wasn't much in the way of news for Columbo, but actually, I almost forgot about this. The original writers of Columbo this year sued Universal. Well, I don't know when they sued them, but they won a case against Universal for not being paid.
That's right.
That was interesting.
You sent me that link. Yes, you're right.
Ooh. So that was interesting. So that's Columbo news.
Was it Link and Levinson?
I have no idea.
I think one of them is dead now, but I think Link is the one that's alive. But I don't know. This is just a podcast. We just talk about the content of the episodes. We really don't know shit about what we...
But that's Columbo news. I mean, how often will there be Columbo news?
Yeah. So, all right, Steve. So what I want you to do now is I want you to spin the Wiggin' Wheel of the 90s and see what we'll be talking about next week.
All right. I'm doing it now.
All right. It's one of 16 episodes.
Well, it's going to be a 90s, huh?
We have 16 left, Steve. 16. And
of the 90s or total?
In the 90s. And it's going to be... It's going to be Undercover.
Okay. All right. Undercover. Who's in that?
Ed Begley Jr.
Who?
Ed Begley Jr. Stockard Channing. I don't remember who else is in it. There are a handful of others. But it is... What is the premise? This one I can't say. I think you better just watch it and be prepared to talk about it.
I can't wait.
Okay, Undercover. I haven't seen this one in years, by the way. So, are you looking forward to that, Steve?
No. I'm not. By your lack of enthusiasm and you're not telling me much about it, that concerns me.
Okay. Well, we'll see. You never know. It might be a Emmy-winning, masterpiece. So
Undercover.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Happy New Year, Sean.
All right. Well, Happy New Year to you too, and Happy March to everybody else who is not in.
So Happy Easter, Sean.
Yeah. All right. Happy Easter, everybody. All right. Good night. Thank you for listening to the Columbo Confab podcast. To email us with a comment or question, write to columboconfab@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter @ColumboConfab, and look for us on Facebook. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us some happy reviews on iTunes. I love clues. Hello, I'm Sean, and I'm the host of the 1001 Movies podcast, based on the book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. Each episode, I randomly pick a film from the book and spend about 10 minutes talking about its director, the cast, the genre, and my personal thoughts on the merits of the film. Each delicious yet bite-sized episode contains information about a film from practically any genre, any country, or any year. Check us out on iTunes and we'll send you free cookies. Some restrictions apply.